did another one that aired yesterday, this being the 5th of July, with a fellow who wrote about Jefferson, talked about the Bible. Jefferson Bible was good.
Oh, yeah.
And welcome very much to Conversation. A pleasure to welcome to the program an old friend of Conversations and the world, and that being Lenni Brenner. Lenni Brenner is an honest-to-God, real public intellectual of the highest order. He's a writer. He's written a number of books. We got it up on the title page. He was the author of what's become a classic, I think it's fair to say, Zionism in the Age of the Dictators, and other books as well. And it's always good and welcome you to Conversation.
And it's always good to be here.
You're always busy. You're always got your antenna out and everything like that. It might be worthwhile for those who may not have seen other programs we've done with you in the past for you to share just briefly your background, okay? We're born, raised, that kind of thing. And then we'll wade into a discussion of the human condition, particularly emphasis, I would think, perhaps on the Middle East, because you've focused on that and it's very much in terms of the human condition now. But share your own background a little bit, if you would, please. Born and raised, education, that sort of thing.
Well, I just celebrated my 70th birthday.
Congratulations, young man. Young man.
All
I didn't
right.
think anyone was younger or older than me, and
All
you're
right.
not. So, okay. I'm 72.
All right. So I'm a
But
puppy.
we're in the same
All right.
general ballpark, yeah.
Okay. Which means born in 37, right? And I was born into an Orthodox Jewish family in Williamsburg, in Brooklyn, which was super Jewish and is super Jewish and so on. But I was regular Orthodox, not Hasid, not the black cats and stuff like that.
Okay, that's a distinction, yeah.
Yes, that is.
Baal Shem Tov or
Yes.
something, yeah.
But then I moved from there to the Bronx, and all of a sudden, Orthodox Jewish little Lenny had my upstairs neighbor was Angelo Cantatori, and all right, you get it right.
Yeah.
And none other than an Italian Iceman, all right. And next door was Johnny Rossi with the pigeons. Okay.
That's New York.
Yeah.
You know, I heard, Lenny, if I may, I heard that got 192 nations, I think, in the United Nations now. There's sizable communities in the New York City area from 189 countries.
Oh, no, 167 countries in Queens and 116 languages.
Really?
Yes.
That's right. You monitored this stuff.
Yes,
yeah, right.
Yes.
Well, I personally
now
like...
understand, you can get any food in not only in the world, in the universe, in Queens.
Not to mention a couple of parallel
Well,
universes
I'm
out
saying,
beyond
try
possibly.
the Venetian sweets. The Martian stuff is hot.
So New York's a great place to be.
Oh no!
Yeah,
Hey, it's the most cosmopolitan place in the world.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
But at any rate, there I was at 5, suddenly surrounded by all kinds of
other people.
Italians and Irish and so on. And what used to be called the mixed neighborhood was really a white neighborhood, but mixed, one third.
I see. Okay.
Like I grew up in an America where I realize now that one of my friends was a Protestant.
Only one.
Yeah.
I'm a Protestant.
All right, but I'm saying in America, I grew up in a neighborhood
where there weren't no WASPs.
There were no, this was a German. But at any rate, when I was 7 years old, 2 things happened to me. I don't remember which happened first. I was 7 at the time, but they both happened. Number one, my mother decided that she'd read in the paper that bacon was good for kids. So the next thing you know, there we are eating bacon, and then after that, we got the swine was a permanent living guest.
And this is an Orthodox family.
Yeah. Now I still went. Up until that minute.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I still went and was bar mitzvahed at 13 from an Orthodox synagogue, but de facto I wasn't Orthodox from 7 on, and now that I've done all kinds of research into Judaism and so on, I realize that that's quite common. In other words,
assimilation?
As you have people moving from, they came here as Orthodox, most of them, and then every family made a decision, abandon some or all of Orthodoxy.
Let me ask you something there. You got a lot of, in the late 19th century and so forth, and the Jewish coming from Poland, from Russia, and that sort of thing. Was it all, was there Reform, conservative branches of Judaism there? Or was that an American invention? Or set me straight on that.
Very good point, good point. Reform was essentially a German Jewish thing, all right? But remember, a lot of Germans, including a lot of Jews, came over in what they call the 1840, the 48ers, all right? In other words, well, let me put it this way. The largest ethnic group in America are Germans.
Germans?
Germans. More than WASPs.
You're talking now?
Right now. More than WASPs.
Really?
Yes. Okay, they came by the millions, all right?
Really?
Yes.
When?
From
Bismarck?
about 1848 into the 60s and 70s.
Why were there so many Germans coming to America?
Because they lost the revolutions in 1848. And a lot of people just simply, it was either revolt in Germany or go to America.
Because of the failure?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, no. I mean, what I'm saying
Karl
is,
Marx was in the middle
let
of
me
all
put
that.
it. Let me put it to you this way. What I'm saying on this is not controversial.
No,
I mean, in other words,
this is the facts.
Yeah,
ma'am,
this is
Mr.
right.
Yeah.
And as Jack Webb said, right, the fact, just the facts, ma'am. And now, as a matter of fact, most of those German Jews who were reformed, number one, they didn't speak Yiddish, they spoke German, and number two, they didn't live in Jewish neighborhoods, they lived in German neighborhoods.
They were more assimilated.
Yeah, as Germans.
Germans, right. Big difference in German and Polish. And
yes,
Russian.
yes, okay. And, in fact, the first Jew who was elected to Congress, I forget his name, but he was elected from Milwaukee as a socialist, from a German neighborhood.
Did they carry some of that revolutionary fervor?
Oh, yes.
A 48
yes.
over here?
Let me. The first. Well, I mean, all right. August Bondy, who was the youngest participant in the Vienna Revolution of 48, which also lost. Okay, Jewish kid. He was about 14.
Right.
Okay. His mother realized, listen, if I don't get him out of here, he's going to wind up in a penitentiary, in the prison, you know.
Right.
So she zipped him off to the United States at 14, all right? Bondy got involved, I think it was first in Mexico, but eventually he wound up in the South and then went out to Kansas, for bloody Kansas, with a guy named Fyodor Wiener, who really was a Polish Jew, but again spoke Yiddish and German, right? And Wiener was a big fat fella, like this, about 5'9", 250, big fat guy, you know. Okay, when they went out together with another guy, to Kansas. Now, August was an abolitionist, but Wiener, his attitude was, I'm just here for business. Okay, I'm setting up a general store.
Right.
Okay? Only a southern segregationist German named Dutch something or another. Dutch meant German, you know, Deutsch.
Deutsch,
yeah. became Dutch in America, okay?
Okay.
When a kid has the name, Dutch, it originally was Deutsch.
I know
okay,
that,
no, that's real. That's real. Again, not controversial, you know.
Right. Dutch was a nickname, but it was Deutsch. Okay, that's
okay, so this segregationist, this slaver, Dutch something or another, saw this guy Wiener and thought he's an abolitionist because he's with August Bondy, right? So he came in to beat him up. Only, and now he was 6'2" and 250 pounds. We're talking about a fight between two fatties. Okay?
We were coming out of that Kansas compromise.
All right, now listen to this.
Really
listen to how dramatic this becomes. You ain't heard nothing yet, all right? Wiener not only beats up Dutch, takes his gun from him, and whips him and drives him out of the place, you know? Okay? You don't be messing with me, you know? Okay? But now he realizes, they all realize, him and August, we got to get some support from the abolitionists, otherwise we're in trouble because these guys are going to come after us again.
Big
you know?
issue,
So they go to the next farm. And the next farm are a couple of guys named Brown. And they're waiting for their father to come. Yeah, John's coming any minute.
John Brown?
John
Brown.
John Brown, all right? So now, wait a minute, it gets wilder than that, all right? Next thing you know, you're getting into bloody Kansas, all right? And Brown and Wiener and August, they're out there marching towards Lawrence to rescue Lawrence, all right? And then all of a sudden they get word, no, we don't want you here, you'll cause too much trouble. And then all of a sudden they hear that the slavers back home in Potawatomi Creek are threatening the women. We're going to get you.
Potawatomi Creek in Kansas?
In Kansas, all right? So Brown says, Oh, no, they don't be doing that to me. Okay? So I need some help, fellas. Theodore, Teddy, that's Big Fat Wiener, who by now is an abolitionist, you understand, all right? He's been converted by Brown, all right? You ride with me in the wagon, and my son's here, et cetera, et cetera. August, you don't come with us. You're the messenger. We're going to meet after we take care of these crackers down there at Potawatomi. We're going to meet over at the hill. You meet us in the hill. You're our messenger because nobody knows you around here. So you can get around. They see us. They know us. All right? So they go in the middle of the night. Okay? I think it was August 25th. Don't hold me to the date. I've written it, but I don't have it in my head right now. I got you. Okay? And they come knocking on the door of these here slavers in Potawatomi Creek and saying, you? Yeah. Daddy, you leave the kids, say goodbye to the kids. We're taking you. You. And then...
Shot him dead.
No.
No?
Oh, no. Brown says now, see, we're going from cabin to cabin. We don't be shooting people. That makes noise. Okay?
The old saber?
Hit him with a sword. The sword. Okay?
Sword.
The sword.
Yeah.
Sword of the law.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So now what happens is that Brown is ready to do the killing, but his sons ain't. One of his sons, two of his sons ain't. You know, I mean, in other words, not when they're put on the spot. Okay, Teddy, you take care of them, all right? So fat Polish Jewish Teddy Wiener. I've detailed this. I mean, I've read it, all the stuff on John Brown. They killed 5 guys. He killed at least 2 of them. Okay. Now understand, Potawatomi Creek is the beginning of the Civil War.
Okay, I see. What year are we now?
Oh, what's it? 1856,
56,
7?
Early,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah. See, because it's going into the Civil War.
And
all right. Okay. Now, all I know. August Bondy, I know a lot about this from August Bondy, later wrote his memoirs, okay? Theodore Wiener was just one of these great figures in history who just happened to be in the right place at the right time, and then he was in the Union Army, big fat guy, you know, and then went out west and disappeared.
Okay,
Didn't
we
write
started talking
it.
about this because of the German. That was really surprised me, the biggest ethnic group, and then it was also coming out of Germany, and Bismarck. And the thing of Bismarck, was there...
No, Bismarck is later. In other words, Bismarck is the next swing of German nationalism.
Because Bismarck was the basis of Social Security. A lot of things were going on in Prussia.
Yeah, but that's all later. That's, in other words, Bismarck...
But it's part of the German presence here in the United States or something? Or influence or not?
No.
Progressive influence?
No.
Okay. And why are you writing, why are you researching? Is it part of a book or something you're doing, a paper?
Well,
or what?
Let me put it this way. My specialty, insofar as I have...
You've done a lot on the Middle East.
Hold on a second. I have 2 specialties. One is Zionism, the other is American history. All right?
Okay.
I have here... This is 51 documents, Zionist collaboration with the Nazis.
But let me hold it. They want me to hold it up like this.
But this one is Jefferson and Madison on separation of church and state.
This is Zionism.
So I basically...
And your classic, which you have up as a title, Zionism in the Age of the Dictators, is
that was
a classic.
My first book, right.
I don't know if they've been able to pick up on this book or not. But
well,
this one, why don't you talk about this book here?
All right, but what I'm trying to get at is you asked me why I was doing the research.
Yeah, on
Kansas. I have 2 specialties. One is Jewish history, the other is American history, or American history and Jewish history. So the guy who put the sword to the slavers at Potawatomi Creek turns out to be the Theodore Wiener, this fat Jewish businessman.
Yeah, right.
It mixes my 2.
Oh yeah, I see.
Get my point.
I see. That's the interface. At the interface. Action at the interface. Yeah,
right. But now understand, it's one of the most important events in human history.
Yeah. Well, you bowled me over when you said German was the largest ethnic group here. I didn't realize that.
Oh yeah.
More than. I mean, you don't. Do you count the English as a group?
No, I'm saying there are more
German descent people than English descent in the United States of America.
Yes.
Since how long? Since the mid-19th century?
First off, the
That's
Germans
really
started
interesting. I hadn't thought of that.
Germans started coming in with the Pennsylvania Dutch. Okay, so they've been here a lot longer than the 1848ers, but the real migration was 48ers. Look, I mean, you go to the Northwest in the United States, You're talking about Germans and Scandinavians.
Scandinavians
all
up
right,
in,
but
in
Germans
Minnesota
all
and
over,
Italy.
all over there. All over there.
That's really
in
interesting.
fact,
I hadn't realized.
in the Civil War, you had German regiments where everybody in the regiment spoke German.
We had the Prussians at Washington at Trenton, you know. But
well,
they were Prussian, you know.
Listen, let me tell you something. When the Hessians surrendered, when the British surrendered at Princeton and Trenton.
Yeah, that was a big turning point.
But what people don't know is that George kept the Hessian military band with him.
Really?
Yes, they were on parole as long as they were with him.
Those Germans, they were added together.
Everywhere that George Washington went, from there on in, okay, he was accompanied by a fine German military
because
band.
they knew how to do it. Yeah,
I mean,
and
you know, but
the German nation has been really advanced, even in the case of the Nazi Germany. I mean, like Werner von Braun, we couldn't have gotten to the moon if it hadn't been for Werner von Braun and a lot of the scientists and so forth. And there was a development of the German culture, industry and organization, business management, and all that sort of thing. They were really created a lot of the advancement of technology. Werner von Braun.
Yeah. Okay. The only reason why London wasn't nuked by Hitler was
He couldn't have nuked. He couldn't have nuked. He didn't have nuke.
The only reason why Hitler didn't have the nuke.
Oh, I see. Okay. Oh, I see. Okay.
Was because in the 20s and 30s, rockets had gotten a reputation as being Aryan, and subatomic physics had a reputation for being Jewish.
No fooling.
Yes.
Really?
So wait a minute. Now, finally, by 1939, both sides in the war are looking, you know, at what's going to happen militarily, you know, in terms of weapons. Okay. So you have Einstein and someone else. Actually, it wasn't Einstein who started, but another. Niels Bohr, I think it was, tells Rose, with Einstein signing on, saying, hey, Frank, you know, you should be making a bomb because otherwise the Fuhrer's going to make the bomb, all right?
And Einstein wrote that letter to Roosevelt.
No, but you see, he didn't write it. It was he signed the letter.
Stiglitz, or not Stiglitz, some S.
Yeah, somebody else. So it isn't important. But what I'm getting at is at the same time, the scientists in Germany went to Führer and said, look, you know, we should be making the atom bomb, but unfortunately, we don't have a nuclear reactor. It'll take us 5-6 years by the time we make the nuclear reactor. The only nuclear reactor in Europe is in Paris. So the Führer says, look, you cannot do secret military research in an occupied Paris. So, but you say the war will be over in 5 or 6 years, so either I've won it or I've lost it.
What year are you talking about the Führer thing?
We're talking about 1940. They've taken Paris.
40. Right, okay, yeah.
Okay.
Right.
And now they're talking about, you know, hey man, you know, the Americans are obviously leaning towards getting into the war on Britain's side.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
So, you know, we got to think ahead, et cetera, et cetera. You know, there's going to be a war. It's getting bigger and bigger, and so maybe we're going to take on the Soviet Union. As I say, his scientists came to him and said, we need it. We need atomic research. But when they realized they couldn't do it in time, and that's the only because the Führer was an anti-Semite. Okay, in other words, the glitch
because it was associated with the Jewish
with
physicists.
the Jews. Yeah. Now this is from his Speer, his
architect.
He wrote about it after the war, about this little glitch. So understand, basically speaking, my attitude is that civilization really came to an end in World War II, and it's only that kind of fluke thing that civilization actually floated along afterwards.
And then it could have been different.
Well, I mean, in other words, if Hitler weren't so wound on anti-Semitism, okay,
it could have been. We'd be speaking German.
All right, but what I'm saying is that Werner Braun, the only reason why he didn't nuke London was because he didn't have it.
Over such an irrationality, cockamamie thing.
Well,
in a way, you know.
Look, let me put it to you this way.
A lot of the things turn on
Let me put it to you this way. I did a book, Zionism in the Age of the Dictators.
Yeah, it's classic. It's a classic.
Which is about Zionism in the period of Mussolini and Hitler.
Right.
Okay, but there's also Stalin plays a role, and
right.
he's in the book, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And now my publisher told me, gave me some very good advice. You know, he said, look, remember, you're writing a book about Zionism in the age of the dictators. You're not writing a book about the dictators. If people want to buy a book about the dictators,
there's a bunch of them on the show.
Yeah, you know, so keep the focus.
So
I touched on a couple of things, because, I mean, you know, let's put it this way. When Hitler came to power, Zionism was a sideshow in Germany. I mean, it was not...
When he came to power, 33?
Yeah, I mean, it was not decisive in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah,
you know,
it hadn't been since Herzl's first
I'm saying, you know, but what I'm trying to get at is that what struck me about politics in, let's say, 1933, everywhere, okay? You not only have Hitler in power, and you had Mussolini, who was immensely popular with the rich all over the world, man. I mean, the New York Times supported him in 1922 when he came to power. Oh, yeah, editorially.
They'd walked all over Ethiopia
and
Libya.
All right, but now, by that time, you know, people were getting worried about it, you know. But what I'm trying to get at is that you had Hitler and Mussolini, okay, but you also had the United States with the KKK and segregation all the way. I mean, Washington, D.C. was absolutely...
Deep Jim Crow.
Deep Jim Crow, all right. There was not one single black delegate at a Democratic Party convention until 1940.
Okay.
All right. Not one.
Army was still segregated.
Roosevelt comes to power in 33 also.
Army still segregated.
Oh, totally segregated.
The only thing they brought to the First World War was to Europe was in the time of the First World War was Jim Crow.
Right. Well, let me put it this way. Roosevelt is the high point of American racism, because up until World War II, while the Army was segregated, the Air Force wasn't. Roosevelt segregated the Air Force. And, of course, Roosevelt put the Japanese in concentration camps.
That's right.
All right?
Oh,
which is the high point of American racism.
Okay.
All right?
Yeah.
Because he kept black segregation and added concentration camps for American citizens. He stuffed little babies into the stables at Santa Anita Racetrack. In other words, when they took...
Japanese?
Yes, when they took the Japanese off the streets, when they sent them to the concentration camps, first they had to put them in a local place, you know, to get the buses. Terminal. So they used Santa Anita Racetrack, the stables in Santa Anita Racetrack. That's one of the great contributions to world civilization of the Democratic Party.
Right? You know, they got this thing now, Endgame, if you've seen it, they got this thing, it's Homeland Security. Big bill got through and passed, and it's there to build detention centers.
I have this is you know
I'll send you the link.
Okay.
Yeah, it's there. Endgame. It's really a thing. It's like back in Eastland days. You know, down the south they had detention centers.
Well, they had detention centers set up for lefties.
They had a couple of lists, 250,000 names. Yeah. The hell with habeas corpus, put them in. You know, that kind of stuff.
Well, look,
internal security threat.
Let me put it this way. The Trotskyists were immediately arrested when America went to war in 1941, the leaders of the Socialist Workers' Party, for a conspiracy to advocate the overthrow, the overthrow of the government.
Just the advocate.
In other words, conspiracy to sell books. Okay.
Yes, right.
All right. And I became a radical in 1952, and I joined the youth section of the Socialist Party, but I joined another group called the Young Socialist Alliance, which was the youth group of a thing called the Independent Socialist League in 1953. It was on a subversive list, and no member could work for the government of the United States. You know, right now, of course,
there were a couple of lists of people that are going to be rounded up, suspected habeas corpus. You're probably on both those. There was one about 50,000 or something. There was one about 250,000.
Well, let me put it to you this way.
And that was Mr. Eastland
let me
from
put
the
it to you
South.
this way. I have my FBI file.
Yeah, you got that, didn't you?
It runs from 1953, I think, to about 1980, 1954.
Another big fat tome, huh,
Yeah.
Mr.
Oh,
Hoover?
big, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, most of it is blacked out.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
okay.
Redacted.
But I have some things, you know, like they followed me through the streets from a civil rights meeting to my home, you know, I mean, because that's typed out, you know. And when I moved from city to city, the government of the United States, Republican and Democrat. Now understand, the only thing I was doing was talking, and particularly about civil rights.
Right, which was in the air then. You worked with Stokely a lot.
Well, let me put it this way. On the day that I came down for the first time to a left-wing organization was in May 1952.
So that means you're going to be how old? Or just
I was 15.
15?
Okay. Yeah.
Young.
And that day I met Jim Farmer.
Yeah, James Farmer.
Okay, who later organized the bus rides through the South.
Right.
Okay. Right. Now later I worked with Bayard Rustin.
Yeah.
Okay, who later, 63, he actually organized the big I Had a Dream.
Was it he who put it together?
He put it together.
Really?
Yeah. Well, now Bayard was a black gay, and he did it with a white gay named Tom Kahn.
I don't know.
Okay. Well, I mean, I know.
Yeah, I know.
All right, and they were the two main organizers. Right. See, King was an orator, obviously a gifted orator. Obviously.
Not bad at all.
No, I mean, I'm saying, you know, I mean, but he wasn't an organizer. I mean, it was Bayard. Now, the only reason why Bayard didn't become as prominent as Martin
King.
Was because he was gay, and they were afraid of that.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
Now he eventually did.
Two strikes against you.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Okay. Now I didn't work with Stokely then. I didn't meet. I mean, I saw him. You know, I mean, I was at events with him, but I didn't work with him then. I started working with Stokely in 1985. Okay. What had happened was that a friend of mine. I'd been involved in the Berkeley free speech movement.
Right.
And a friend of mine, Brad Cleveland, who was also, I mean, he was one of the leaders of it, of the free speech movement, he got into a plane here in New York on his way back to Berkeley, and he recognized Stokely. So he sat down and started talking to him. And they're talking, and then all of a sudden, Stokely whips out a copy of Zionism in the Age of the Dictators. And says, you got to read this book.
Yeah, right.
So Brad said, Lenny lives down the road from me. So
that was
now let me tell you something. I realize now, in terms of high points of success or whatever, you know, as a political person, as a writer, etc., I have, so to speak, two high points. Okay.
All right.
One was in 1983. I got a rave review for Zionism of the Age of the Dictators from the London Times.
London Times. Yeah.
London Times.
That's the establishment.
Yes.
That's practically Buckingham Palace.
Well, let me put it this way: the guy who wrote it, Edward Mortimer, just retired. He was Kofi Annan's communications director at the UN.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah.
Okay, and he's back in London, and we're still pals.
Right.
You know, in other words, we became pals after he wrote.
Congratulations.
Yeah. But what? Not Kofi Annan. I mean.
No, I know.
Edward Mortimer.
Yeah.
Okay. But the other success was Stokely Carmichael coming to see me over my book. Because anybody, I don't care you're left wing, right wing, if you know anything about the history of the civil rights movement, you know who Stokely Carmichael is.
Yeah, sure.
You know, anybody, all right? I mean, he was in the newspaper
he was great.
every day, maybe. You know, I mean, think about
Black
it.
Power!
You know, but I'm saying every day.
And down there fighting them dogs early, man.
I'm saying,
voting
in other
people.
words, let me put it this way.
Great guy.
If you have to list the major figures in the civil rights movement, it would be King, Malcolm, Stokely. Those would be the top three. Everybody
that
else.
Would be from my way of
yeah. So you know him coming, and then we worked together for the next until he died 13 years later in the coalition against racism and Zionism.
Right. Okay. Yeah. which brings us around maybe to the book into Zionism, which is something that is very much in the air now.
Right.
You wrote that book, and now you've written it, and you talked about Jabotinsky and all that kind of thing, and Zionism as a movement, and so forth. And it took a lot of attention, got the attention of most openly a lot of other people, and that's a classic, actually. You know, that kind of thing. You've written it, you understand it very well. And now you've written more recently, and in fact, we got a medal I think we're going to try and show. So, but this book, 51 Documents, Zionism Collaboration with the Nazis.
Right.
Now, talk to that.
Okay, well,
a little
now,
bit.
If you
and then we want to bring it around to the present, Nasrallah, Hezbollah, and all that.
If you folks can bring up the medal that we're talking about.
Yeah, well, they got it. Maybe they've got it to where they could bring it up.
There we go. All
You've got this medal. What is this medal? You can describe it. It's on the screen.
I'll explain. All right.
Okay.
In this book, Zionism in the Age of the Dictators, I have an article originally written in German by a Nazi called Leopold von Mildenstein, called A Nazi Goes to Palestine.
Okay.
He went there as the guest of the German Zionist Federation, the Zionistische Vereinigung von Deutschland. Yeah, got it right. Okay. He went as the guest. Okay. He spent 6 months in Palestine as the guest of the Zionists, and then wrote up his expedition for the Angriff, which was Joseph Paul Goebbels' propaganda organ, all right? The leading propaganda organ of the Nazis. Okay. And if we can get that medal up again.
Yeah, bring the medal back if you can. There you go. Okay.
To commemorate the
fraternal organization,
the
collaboration.
Bring it up. Bring it up.
Bring up the medal. Keep it up there if you can.
There you go. To
keep it up there and let's talk to it.
The Nazis put out this medal. Now, what you're seeing is both sides. Okay, one has a Star of David, which is a symbol of the Zionist movement.
Right.
And the other side, slightly smaller, is a swastika, and it says, a Nazi fragt nach Palästina und writes about it, forgive me for the...
Yeah, it's all right.
A Nazi goes to Palestine and writes about it in Angriff, der Angriff.
That's what it says, the word says
That's what it means, yes.
And what was this struck for? I mean, what was there, a conference?
It was a commemoration by the Nazis of von Mildenstein's trip to Palestine. Von Mildenstein had been assigned by Himmler.
Himmler,
to set up a Jewish office in the SS. Okay. Now you have to understand something. When they came to power in 1933, January 1933, the first thing that they did was round up communists, not Jews. Okay. They discriminated against Jews, but communists went right to the prison. Okay, because they were a dangerous enemy to the Nazis on the streets.
The Jews were very assimilated to German culture.
But what I'm saying is the Jews were 1% of the population, but the communists were at 12 to 16% of the population. So Hitler moved on them first. Okay, so then the question became, well, what are you going to do to the Jews, Adolf? Come on.
Yeah. You're talking all this talk. What about the walk?
Right. Okay. So what they did first was they figured they'd boycott Jewish stores in Germany. Okay, but that created a huge problem for German businessmen who wanted to keep exporting to New York, to Eastern Europe, etc.
And use the good offices.
Okay, now wait a minute. Now New York at that time, this was 1933, was 29% Jewish.
29?
29%.
Mixed German and
I'm
East
talking
European?
about Jews. I mean, mostly East German Jews. East European. Some Germans, but what I'm getting at is 29%. So when you're talking...
29? That's a lot. What are they now?
About 8%.
8 now. Okay, that's interesting.
Well, because they've moved to
all right,
the city,
right. And they've assimilated,
all right.
too.
Now, in Poland, which again was a market for German goods, the Jews were 10% of Poland, never mind of Warsaw. I'm not talking about Warsaw. I'm talking of all of... In other words, the Jews in the United States at that time were 3% of the American population, but they were heavily concentrated in New York. But when you're talking about in Poland, you're talking about the business community was overwhelmingly Jewish.
And in Germany?
Not as much. The big department stores were Jewish, okay, but we still had a million zillion other.
And a lot of the Jews felt very much assimilated to the German culture, and they didn't see from 33. They could not see what was to come.
Well,
very well. It seems to me there was that element.
Well, let me put it this way. The problem that a lot of them wanted to leave right away, okay, and the key problem was, where do you go? Because America, which was the place where immigrants went to before World War I, in 1921, America had put in country-by-country limitations, quotas, okay? And so even though Germany had a very large quota, when you're talking about 1% of the population, they couldn't all get on the quota, if you follow me, all right? Now, what happened was at this point, the Zionists came to the Nazis, literally, all right? They sent them a memo, okay?
We can collaborate.
We can collaborate, all right? Now, the memo...
And they did.
Now, the memo wasn't published until 1963.
Really?
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, you know, I mean, in other words, was not published. It was a secret memo.
It was secret. Okay. The whole thing was secret.
Yeah, but... What I'm saying is they sent a thing saying, hey, we want to collaborate because you're against mixed marriage, we're against mixed marriage.
Yeah.
Okay? And it was when Mildenstein who picked up on it. His attitude was, listen, all you guys, you're talking about boycotting the Jews in Germany, but the problem with that is it creates anti-German boycotts everywhere else. Now, you're also talking about throwing Jews out of here and let them go wherever they want. The problem with that is when they go to some place like London, they badmouth the Führer, and that creates problems again for German goods. But if you send them to Palestine, all they're talking
to camels.
They're talking to camels and Jews.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
Camels and Jews.
Yeah,
right?
It's a natural, right?
All right.
It's a fit.
Yeah. So he became the most passionate pro-Zionist among the SS men, all right? And he had a young disciple, a guy by the name of Adolf Eichmann, all right? And von Mildenstein said, listen, man, you're going to work for me, you got to learn Hebrew, okay?
As modern Hebrew.
Yes.
Ben Yehuda.
Yeah. So Adolf Eichmann learned Hebrew, okay? Now, every time I tell this to Jews, they burst out laughing because the one thing that drives Jewish kids away from the Jewish religion is having to learn Hebrew.
Hebrew at Hebrew school.
Okay, in other words, they don't want to hear it.
They're learning in Hebrew school modern or ancient Jews?
Well, it depends.
Ancient.
See, it depends. The Orthodox
big difference, I think.
No, they're big difference. But what I'm saying is that the Orthodox learn classical Hebrew and Talmudic Hebrew, et cetera. Right. But more what they call modern. You see, at Yeshiva University here in New York, I'm sure that they teach both, modern and ancient. And you don't have that many Reformed Zionists, but they, I'm sure, teach modern Hebrew, but they don't have many kids.
And they speak modern Hebrew in Tel Aviv.
Oh, you're modern. Yes. But what I'm getting at is that the average Jewish kid, okay, from my generation on, the idea of voluntarily learning Hebrew.
Are you kidding?
I'd
rather play baseball.
Okay? So the idea of Adolf Eichmann studying Hebrew,
that's right.
It's just too wonderful for words.
So
they automatically laugh.
Satire the universe delivers down upon us is beyond the irony.
Satire, the irony, whatever. No, you're right. But at any rate, Eichmann, then, in 1937, a Zionist, a labor Zionist, a member of the Haganah, which was the labor Zionist underground militia, and it later became the backbone of the Israeli army.
Stern Gang?
No, the Haganah.
Haganah is different than
Haganah.
Stern.
Stern Gang is totally different.
All right, okay.
The Haganah sent a guy by the name of Feivel Polkus to Berlin, and he negotiated with Eichmann, because von Mildenstein said, Adolf, this is your chance to, you know, talk to these guys. And Polkus invited Eichmann to come to Palestine as the guest of the Haganah, whereupon Eichmann picks up his bags and goes to Palestine. He was there for 1 day as the guest of the Haganah when the British realized he pretended to be a newspaper man.
All right.
Well, you know, I mean...
Used his own name?
No. That I can't answer. That I don't know. But
make a hell of a movie, wouldn't
he had his credentials, okay? Well, I'll get to that in a minute. He had his credentials, but the British realized, what are you talking about, a correspondent? You know, I mean, he's a spy or he's an agent. So they kicked him out. And
after 1 day?
After 1 day.
That's pretty quick.
Well, they kicked him out.
I didn't know the British were that adroit.
All right, but they kicked him out, and he went to Egypt, and again, Polkus followed him there, and then they negotiated. Now, we have all this from the German files, because Adolf was a good German bureaucrat, and he rolled it up when he went back to Berlin.
Very orderly.
Very orderly, right? So what Polkus said is, look, if you make it such that Jews going to Palestine get a cheaper rate going out the door, taking their money out the door.
That was a big issue. Whether they could take their property, make it liquid.
Let me explain. If you were a German, didn't matter whether you were Jewish, Gentile, didn't matter. And you wanted to take money out of Germany.
Right.
You got nicked at the border.
Really? Is that
everybody.
Right? Everybody.
Okay.
Everybody. Jews or
didn't matter. Didn't matter.
And from when to when? From what years, I mean?
Oh, even before Hitler came to power.
Really?
Yes. Let me explain something that's hard for modern Americans to understand.
Yeah.
We're richer than cream compared to the world of 1929, 1933.
Okay.
Because I'm reading this stuff by Eichmann where he's talking about, I'm going to Palestine, and he has to bang on people, Germans, you know, SS men, to get the money for the boat ticket. You know, I mean, in other words, stuff that today, you know, the CIA takes out of the petty cash.
Right.
I mean, this is
or any foundations that are lined up K Street.
I'm saying, you know, I mean, it's done. Nobody thinks twice about it. I mean, hey, I have flown. I've been to London 14 times. All right, you know, I mean, it's a different world. But at any rate, everybody going out of Germany got
at
nicked.
that time. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So what the Zionists did was they worked out a deal with the Nazis in 1933, and it's called the Ha'avara, which means the transfer in English. Okay. Basically what it is okay, I'm the German Jew. I take 20,000 Reichsmarks. I give them to you, the German government. Okay. You then send 18,000 Reichsmarks worth of steel pipes over there to Palestine, to the Zionists in Palestine. They sell the steel pipes. Okay, use them in irrigation, you know, whatever. I'm using.
And what happened to the two?
Wait a minute. Now I'm the German Jew. I show up 6 months later or a year later, whenever, in Palestine. I get the equivalent in British pounds, of course, of 15,000 Reichsmarks.
So you've down
from
in other 20 to 15.
Right, but that's cheaper.
It's something.
I get more that way than if I tried to take the same 20,000 Reichsmarks and take
across
them to
the border.
New York.
Yeah. Because they would nick you at the border.
They would nick me for more.
And they would nick Jews or Germans.
It didn't matter.
Citizens.
Didn't matter.
That's the way it was
Didn't matter. I'm telling you. Didn't matter.
Yeah, okay. That's a very different kind of world.
I understand.
Where capital moves so easily.
I'm explaining. Take my word for it.
Okay. I know, I do, Lenny.
This is not controversial.
No, you're a serious scholar. I know, yeah.
So what that they did in 1933, when Polkus showed up in 1937, he wanted to get an even better break from the Germans, for immigrants going to Palestine. So,
to Palestine, a better break.
Yes.
Now, could that be a deal have been done to America, or did that apply where if you're
I'm
leaving
you only
let me
to
ask
Palestine?
Let me ask you a question. that idea that if you're leaving Germany, you cannot get liquid, you can't get that. Did that apply if you're coming from France, or if you're coming from Italy, or only Germany?
No.
It wasn't a general thing. People coming to these shores were nicked at the country they
No, this has nothing to do with this shores.
Okay, no.
You're going out of Germany. Doesn't matter where you're going.
So it was the thing German.
German. All right.
Okay,
but
I didn't
what
realize.
I'm saying is that from 1933 on, the Zionists were selling steel pipes and other things. Okay. Not only in Palestine, but in the entire Middle East, like in Iraq and in Lebanon, etc. All right. In other words, while everywhere else, Jews were obviously boycotting Nazi goods. Okay, the Zionists were selling them. All right. Now, Polkus comes to Berlin in 1933 and says, "I'll do better." Okay. If you give us an even better break, okay, I will spy for you and tell you where there is oil in the Middle East.
Like a jobber.
And to show you that I'm ready to spy for you, I tell you, I give you, this is him talking to Eichmann now, I give you two pieces of information. Okay, number one, the German Communist Party, they're using a radio to beam across the border from Belgium, a secret radio to beam across the border into Germany. They're doing it from a truck. That's why you can't locate them. Okay.
Pirate radio.
Yeah, but that, this is the Zionists telling the
collaborating.
And you guys have these Arabs meeting in Berlin, but what you don't know is that one of them is relaying everything that's going on in your meetings to Moscow.
Oh, that's interesting information.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now,
so there's collaboration.
All right. Now, we know this because after World War II, the Americans captured the SS files. All right. And there was Eichmann's report. All right. Now, in 1983, after I had published Zionism in the Age of the Dictators, I went to Jerusalem, and I went to the Israeli Holocaust Institute, the Yad Vashem, okay? And I met with one of their leading scholars, a fellow by the name of Yoav Gelber, okay, who is a Zionist, but a very nice guy and a real scholar. I mean, in other words,
thank you.
We're talking. I'm a scholar. He's a scholar. We're talking scholar.
I understand. I understand. Yeah.
So, among other things, we're talking, and I say, look, I got this file, the German file of Eichmann negotiating with Polkus.
Is that in here?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, that's one of the 51 documents
one of the
this
51 documents.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Now, but it's available literally here in New York in the 42nd Street Library in German. Okay? I mean, in other words, I had it translated from the German, right? Okay. Now, what I'm getting at is I said to him, look, we have the stuff, but who is Polkus? What's going on here, I mean, now this is Yoav Gelber, who's a Yad Vashem scholar. In other words, this is the Israeli government's thing, okay? He says, Lenny, I can't tell you that because he's saying this to me, I've gone to the Haganah archives and they won't let me see the Bible Polkus file.
That's deep cover.
All right? So, now understand, my book has already been published.
Yeah, you're talking this book.
No, Zionism in the Age of the Dictators. It's already been published.
Right.
But I'm there. I go to the Haganah archives, and I met Chaim Zamir, who is their archivist, and I said, I would like to see your Fievel Polkus file. Okay, I'm just going through the motions.
Through the floor, yeah.
you understand, this is going through the motions. I don't expect to see it, He says, there is no Fievel Polkus file. So I says, but Yoav Gelber from the Yad Vashem says that you wouldn't let him see it. So he says, There is no 5-0 Polkas file because it would be too embarrassing.
Wow, really?
All right?
Yeah. That's the one you want to get.
Yeah, you understand. I didn't come there to lie about Chaim Zamir, you know, all right? All right. Now, but when I published the Eichmann stuff in here, I quote him as what he told me.
Right.
Now, I've subsequently discovered that apparently it's their standard rule. Nobody sees a 5-0 Polkas file because another scholar named Nicosia tried to see it. Yeah, I guess he saw it in my book or something like that.
You know him?
Well, no. But I mean, I'm speculating.
Yeah,
but,
okay, yeah.
But the point is, it's confirmed.
Anyway.
Now, let me just wind up on this.
Yeah, yeah.
What I'm getting at is they can't deny that it happened because we have the SS file.
Right.
Okay. What they are hiding is who sent Polkas to negotiate with Eichmann, who discussed it, who he reported to when he came back. In other words,
it would be in there.
Well, it would be in the file because he didn't do it on his own.
Right. Right.
So, and there's no doubt that he was a Haganah agent because a leading Zionist Holocaust scholar, David Cesarani, who was a bitter opponent of mine, admitted that he was a Haganah agent. So the key question is, who sent him? Now, I don't have X-ray eyes, so I don't know.
Who's got the screenplay rights to this story?
Are you ready for this?
Yes, we've only got about 10 minutes left.
Are you ready for this?
So we got to start rounding it up.
I was in 1983. I was in Damascus.
Yes.
And there was a movie festival in the next hotel.
Yes.
So I discovered Vanessa Redgrave was there.
Oh, God bless her.
So I contacted her and I said, look, I'm writing this book, Zionism in the Age of the Dictators. She said she wanted to do a book about the Zionists, et cetera, et cetera. So she says, send it to me in London. Okay. I go from Damascus to Beirut. I'm sitting in a PLO office. Who comes walking in the door?
Where? In Beirut. Beirut, yeah.
Who comes walking in the door?
Vanessa.
Yeah. So I introduced myself.
Yeah.
She says, well, Lenny, I'm only here to pick up, we're here to get some keys to a car and we're going somewhere, it's me and this guy. Send it to me in London. So I do. A month later, I get a phone call. This is Vanessa Redgrave. I would like to buy the movie rights.
Right. And she does? She got the rights to that?
Yeah, she got it. Okay. Now, what then happened was she got driven. She was supposed to do an oratorio with the Boston Symphony, and the Zionists drove her off the stage, and she had to go into a big court case, so we never made the movie. Right. But she paid me for it.
But she had the option?
And she still owns the option.
She still has the option. Somebody might do it yet.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Whereupon Jim Allen, okay, and his buddy Ken Loach decide to do a play based on my book.
Oh, that's it, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
Now, Ken Loach just won the Cannes Film Festival Award as the world's leading director for last year, all right? They put out a play which got driven off the stage.
Right,
all right. But then it turned into an absolute disaster.
Called Celebrity.
It became
in England.
It's called it was called for years until it was finally produced, the most famous play never produced.
Yeah, right.
I mean, you know, it was famous. I mean, a guy wrote a review for one of my books, the London Times, and he says, "Is there anybody in England who doesn't know
about it?" Yeah, in England they do. Yeah. We only got a couple minutes left, and what you're talking about, you got 51 documents documenting collaboration between the Zionist cause that were interested in Palestine and the Nazis, and the Star of David was the only flag that flew in Germany besides the swastika. Right. There was collaboration between the Zionists and the Nazis.
Well, like I say, they offered
now that's a very. A lot of people are going to take
the Zionists were more eager to collaborate with the Nazis than the Nazis were eager to collaborate with the Zionists.
It takes two to tango.
Yeah,
they did.
No. I mean, in other words,
but that's a pattern.
Yeah. Well, look, and it is a pattern because remember this: Ariel Sharon in 1981 went to South Africa and marched with the South African army in an 8-day invasion of Namibia, and then came to the United States and said, South Africa needs more weapons.
Right.
Come on there, you guys.
Well, they learned their apartheid lesson
well. What I'm getting
and that's what they got now, is an apartheid state.
Now understand something.
Apartheid
all
attitude.
The stuff that
and
I'm
great
telling you,
deep
all
trouble.
the stuff that I'm telling you about the Nazis and the Zionists, everything has been verified and checked, et cetera, et cetera. But most pro-Zionist Jews don't know about it. Okay. But also what I've discovered recently is most pro-Zionist young Jews don't know even about Sharon and Israel being for apartheid. In other words, apartheid's dead and gone. 1990? This is 2007. When I read from a New York Times article where Sharon is saying South Africa needs more weapons. I read this a couple of years ago in one of these so-called progressive synagogues. There was a gasp from the audience. They were shocked. You know, because the younger ones had never heard about this. But let's put it this way. The name of the game in Zionism is Jews should live by themselves, marry each other. You don't have to pray. That's your own business. But
live apart.
Live apart in a Jewish
I don't
state.
know how you say apartheid in Hebrew. How do you translate about Zionism? Is that what you say? They got it and everything. And that's not a thing like the people like to hear. And there's great deep trouble coming because that's coming a cropper now, it seems to me.
Look, what's
we've only just
happened
introduced the possibility of that sequel to the movie.
Let's put it
and we have to stop soon. But go ahead, we only got a minute left.
In the real world, in America and in most places in the Western world, in America, all right, you know, in every country in the world except Australia, a majority of young Jews now marry Gentiles.
Yeah, they're fading into the mist of history.
They are abandoning Judaism, et cetera, et cetera. And the result is that they're becoming more and more hostile to Zionism. Now, I'll tell you this.
From within the Jewish community.
No, well, let me put it this way. Most of them say, I ain't part of the Jewish community anymore.
What do you mean, Aliyah?
Well, let me take it a step further. Princeton University asked all of its students, what's your religion, et cetera, et cetera. And they found the percentage of Jews is dropping. And they said, that's impossible, because the Jews have the highest percentage of kids going to college. All right, so they can't be dropping. They finally figured out what it was. When they ask on the thing, what is your religion, the Jewish kids don't put down Jewish because they ain't, if you get it. In other words, they have
What do they put down in the place of religion?
Atheist or nothing.
Atheist,
Atheist or nothing.
Or secular.
Well, you know, I mean, in other words, what I'm getting at, in other words, to them now, their attitude is Judaism is over there and I'm over here. All right. So Israel is even further away. In other words, they're not part
Israel
of the
is even
community.
more, in terms of the zeitgeist, Israel being more and more isolated, and that's dangerous because they got a lot of weapons.
In terms of young Jews, Israel is as far away as the moon.
Yeah, and that's very dangerous because they got a narrative that they build a lot on, and they've got a lot of weapons and things. So a place to pay attention to. Can't do better than going to the research of Lenni Brenner, it seems to me, to put all this in perspective. Problem, we run out of time.
All right.
It's always the problem. Thanks for coming in,
always.
Thanks for showing the medal. I had never seen that and everything. But it's him again. He's written the book...